I think of every single actor that was cast in the Harry Potter movies, the most accurate depiction of any book character that was done by Robbie Coltrane in his portrayal of Rubeus Hagrid. Or Rubeus Hagrid, I don't really know which one it is. All of the other characters were much more different in their book versions. Harry was way sassier, Ron was way smarter, Dumbledore was way calmer, if you catch my drift. And don't even get me started on Ginny. And I would say that most fans of this book share this sentiment too, that Hagrid is probably one of the best depictions of any character in the book. And I think Hagrid and Luna are actually the two characters that are just so well portrayed by both of the actors that played them. Luna does an incredible job. But this week, with the picture that we got of Nick Frost as Hagrid, and just the sheer excitement that is rising up in my bones for this series, I am rereading the whole entire series for maybe like the 20th time in my life. And I think I found something really, really small, and it kind of is like insignificant that I want to talk about for the character of Hagrid that might be the only thing that Robbie Coltrane didn't really get right. That was like the worst pitch for this video ever, but it is just a small little thing that I think is a difference in how Hagrid is portrayed and his passions and his like inflamed sense of anger. I think this change happens when we meet Hagrid for the first time, or actually the second time. It's when he comes to deliver Harry's letter to him in the hut on the rock. Now the movies depict this pretty well, with the exception of one thing that I think makes Hagrid a character who is a bit better in the books. Now it's interesting. It's like we could have a debate for which character you kind of actually prefer, movie or book Hagrid. But Hagrid gets exceptionally angry in this chapter, and he is a lot less controlled in his anger than the movies really portray. There's even one scene where he has like a Gandalf level anger cloud when he fills up the entire room. The book describes it with his anger. And I want to talk through this whole chapter and show just how I think this small little change is significant for the character of Hagrid, and something that I kind of hope that Nick Frost can portray a little bit more. But as always, make sure you like the video and subscribe too. This is just a channel on essays about good books that we kind of all love. For the moment, it's a lot of Lord of the Rings, but Harry Potter was kind of the foundation of this channel. And I'm getting into some Brandon Sanderson. We'll do some Game of Thrones and Narnia and Dune and all those other, really great classics and good series. And I'm going to read a lot of those. I've never read them before, so I'm reading them for the first time and just giving all my thoughts on it. Harry Potter is the one exception. I've read that about 20 times, but all the rest of them I have not yet read them. So if you'd be into that sort of thing, make sure you subscribe and join in the fun. But I want to talk about a few of these small changes that the writers gave to Hagrid in the movies that I think make a world of difference. And they're subtle and they're small. And honestly, some of the things I actually prefer the movies, because Robbie Coltrane in the movies does such a good depiction of Hagrid. But the first one is the thing that Hagrid says first to Harry, or who he thinks is really Harry. In the movies, he confuses Dudley for Harry, and he says,
"Mind, I haven't seen you since you was a baby, Harry, but you're a bit more along than I would have expected, particularly round the middle."
And this is a cute line. It's like kind of fun. But in the book, I think it's a lot more sentimental and important, because the first thing that he says to Harry carries so much more meaning. He brushes Dudley aside because he knows that's Dudley, and then he says, "Last I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you've got your mom's eyes." And I know this is small, but think about what this means for Harry. Someone who has never seen his parents, and now this random giant comes into this shack and says what he looks like, that he looks like his dad, but he has his mother's eyes. It's a really beautiful thing for Harry to actually experience this, because he doesn't have any pictures. He doesn't really know what his parents look like. And this picture that gets painted of Hagrid from the start is one of someone who is generous, but also someone who's not to be trifled with at the same time. And they do this well in the movies, but not, I believe, to the extent that it happens in the book, because I think he's a bit more consumed by his passions in the book. In the book, Hagrid just kind of tosses around some insults when he immediately gets in the shack. He says to Dudley, "Budge up, you great lump." And then he says to Vernon, in the same little thing that the movies do, he says, "Ah, shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. But this is also partially different. And I think it's actually a good encapsulation of Hagrid's power and how much, I think, greater and more passionate it is in the movies. Or in the book, sorry, not the movies. In the movie, he just takes the gun and bends the barrel. In the book, he takes the gun and ties it in a knot and throws it on the ground. And I know you're thinking, John, this is such an insignificant and dumb change. And I would probably agree with you. But I think it's a subtle change that is the only thing that I can actually really nitpick about Robbie Coltrane, because I think he was almost a perfect Hagrid. He really is the depiction of Hagrid so well. And I think Nick Frost has some big shoes to fill. But I think it's a perfect depiction with the exception of his anger, because I think the book has a bit more of Hagrid's anger. Every moment that Hagrid learns something in this chapter that Harry doesn't know or doesn't understand about the magical world, Hagrid gets angrier and angrier. The first time the book describes it in this really chilling way, it says, "I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't know even about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learnt it all?" "Oh, what?" asked Harry. "Oh, what?" Hagrid thundered. "Now just wait 1 second." He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at the Dursleys, "that this boy knows nothing about anything?" That, again, in the movies, I think this is the angriest that Hagrid gets. It's when he quietly says, "Never insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me." And even this moment when he kind of leaps up, he kind of gets mad to some extent, but it's not like this grand, large anger. He also gets mad when he learns the lie that Vernon and Petunia tell Harry about Lily and James dying in a car crash, and it's just toned down in the movies. And honestly, I have to say, this is something that I love about Robbie Coltrane, and something that I almost think is better in the movies than the book, but I just think it's a difference from movie to book. That even in his anger, it's not all that convincing for the movie depiction of Hagrid, except when he goes quiet. This little moment where Robbie Coltrane says, "Never insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me," is genius, because I think Robbie Coltrane knew that he was a gentle soul. And I think there's that quote, "Beware the wrath of a gentle man." Robbie perhaps knew he couldn't get to the degree of the loud anger that Hagrid feels in this moment in the book, because I don't think he really ever in the movies has this huge moment of anger. Because in the book, when they talk about Dumbledore and it's in all caps, it really shows that Hagrid is yelling these lines. And they're having a yelling match back and forth. It says, "I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks," yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. "Never," he thundered, "insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me." Now, in the movies, it's more like this quiet way that he says it that I actually think is, weirdly, I think is better than the books, because it has like more power if he says it softly. But it's just different. In the movie, he's gentler. In the book, he's just kind of has this wild quality to him where he's a bit more controlled by his passions and his desires. He is a bit angrier and a bit gentler and a bit more loving and a bit more of everything. Hagrid is someone who feels deeply every single emotion that is coming to him. And it's not just in the positive emotions that we see. I think it's also in the emotions like anger coming out in the hut. It actually almost makes me think that Hagrid is using some kind of magic to cast a kind of like anger aura around him in the book. Now, I mean, my theory, and I think most people's theories who really, really love this book, is that Dumbledore being in possession of the Elder Wand, and the Elder Wand being the only wand that we know that can actually mend a broken wand in the entire series, mended the wand of Hagrid and put it in the umbrella. So he has like a full wand in the umbrella, and in that umbrella shaft that he occasionally is able to sneakily use magic with. Because there does seem to be some like definite aura coming out of him. And maybe Hagrid is using magic to make it happen, but then again, I'm kind of conflating the idea of soothing and stirring someone's emotions, like in Mistborn for Brandon Sanderson's writing, which I'm currently reading and doing reviews on. So I'm kind of conflating two magic systems, so I don't really necessarily think that the kind of magic that kind of magic doesn't really exist in Harry Potter, I think. But when Hagrid talks about Dumbledore, he immediately gives Dudley a pigtail, which is true in the movies too, but in the book it just feels like it's more done out of passionate anger. And in the movies, it's just like more calculated. Like he looks over, sees Dudley eating a piece of cake, and he's like, "Oh, he's a little pig. I'm going to make him into a little pig." I think it's a good decision that the filmmakers made, but Ever since this image came out of Nick Frost as Hagrid, I cannot help but think of any differences between the book and the movie. And this is the only difference that I could find between the character of Hagrid in the book versus the character of Hagrid in the movies. It's not really like a critique, but I'm actually really interested to hear what you think is any other difference, because I think Nick Frost has some big shoes to fill with Robbie Coltrane, because I think he's the greatest adapted character in the entire movie franchise, except for maybe his passionate anger. That's the only difference that I have, but let me know if you think there's any other differences between Hagrid in the books versus Hagrid in the movies. I would love to know of any other ones that you think. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.